The soft hum of machines echoed through the long metal hallway of Orbital Health Station 9, floating quietly above the planet Callisto. It was midnight on the station's local cycle, and most crew members were asleep in their cabins. But inside the medical bay, a single figure moved quietly and quickly. Mira, a 32-year-old nurse with tired eyes and steady hands, was finishing her 4th double shift this week. She didn't complain. She never did. There was too much to do, and not enough hands to do it. People depended on her. Even if the station's systems were advanced, when someone was hurt or scared, it was a human voice they wanted. Mira was not alone that night, not really. Hidden behind a rolling shelf of medical supplies, inside a small storage closet, was her 6-year-old son, Toby. A soft blanket was wrapped around him. A small light lit up his tablet screen as he read an old Earth storybook about animals that talked and helped each other. Mom said, "Don't make noise," Toby whispered to himself, practicing patience like she taught him. He wasn't scared. He was used to this routine. Every night Mira worked, he came with her. There was no other choice. After Dale, his father, went missing during a mining mission on Titan, Mira had no family left. The station didn't offer childcare, and Mira didn't trust strangers with her boy not here, not in deep space. Earlier that night, Mira had helped deliver a child born to a Martian engineer. The baby was small, pale, and healthy. Mira smiled when she heard the baby's first cry. But her smile didn't last long. A call came over the comms, an incoming medical emergency. The patient, a cargo loader, had crushed his leg under a fallen container in Dock Bay 2. Mira grabbed her bag and rushed out. But before leaving, she peeked into the closet. "Toby," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "I have to go for a while." "It's serious." "Okay," Toby said. "I'll be good." "You always are." Mira kissed his forehead. "If anyone comes in, stay quiet, like a shadow." Toby nodded bravely. Mira raced down the hallway, not knowing this call would take over an hour. Meanwhile, Officer Bren, an assistant to the station's manager, was making his usual patrol. He liked order, silence, and rules. That night he decided to check the medbay, looking for unauthorized use of space. As part of a policy audit, the door slid open with a soft hiss. He stepped inside. Lights dimmed. The main room was empty, but a small sound caught his ear, a tiny cough. He turned sharply, walked toward the sound. When he opened the closet door, he stared down at a sleepy boy holding a glowing tablet. Toby blinked up at him. "Are you doctor?" he asked politely. Officer Bren frowned. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Before Toby could answer, Mira returned panting, gloves still on, a smear of antiseptic on her cheek. "Wait, please," she said, stepping between them. "He's my son. I had no one to watch him. He stays quiet, I promise." "You brought a child into a restricted area," Bren said coldly. "This is a direct violation of Protocol 3.2.1 non-authorized. Personnel in medical zones." "I've saved 4 lives this week," Mira said, trying to stay calm. "There's no childcare on the station. What was I supposed to do? Leave him floating in a hallway?" Officer Bren didn't answer. He took a photo with his datapad and walked out. The next morning, Mira was called into the admin chamber. The station manager, Raul, was sitting behind his thick glass desk. His face was tight and blank. "You are hereby terminated from your position as of 0600 hours, he said. Mira stood frozen. "Fired? For what?" "For endangering the child, station resources, and violating multiple safety rules. Your personal situation is not our concern." "I was just trying to keep my son safe," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I never left him near danger. He stayed hidden. He never touched anything." "Your explanations are irrelevant," Raul said. "Leave your ID badge and clear your quarters by noon." Mira looked down at her hands. They were still stained from bandaging the cargo loader last night. She left without another word. That afternoon, Mira sat on a crate near the loading docks, her only belongings in a small bag beside her. Toby sat in her lap, tired and quiet. They had no place to sleep now. Not officially. Some workers walked by and gave sympathetic looks. A few whispered, "It's not fair." One man dropped off a food pack without saying anything. Mira didn't cry. She just held her son close and whispered, "It's okay. I'll figure something out. I always do." Toby looked up. "Am I the reason you lost your job?" Mira's heart cracked. "No, sweetheart. You're the reason I work so hard. Never think that." He nodded, then leaned into her chest, listening to her heartbeat like he used to when he was smaller. Above them, large engines roared as a sleek silver ship docked with the station. They didn't know it yet, but someone very important had just arrived, and everything was about to change. The metal floor beneath Myra's feet felt colder than usual as she sat near the cargo bay with her son. It had been 12 hours since she was fired from her job as a nurse on Orbital Health Station 9. Her hands, once always busy with saving lives, now lay still on her lap. Beside her, Toby leaned against her, his small fingers clutching her sleeve. He hadn't said much since morning. He could feel something was wrong. "Mom, are we going back to Earth?" he asked quietly. Myra looked up. The stars outside the large glass panel sparkled, cold and distant. Earth felt like a dream now, too far, too expensive, and no longer home. "No, not yet," she said softly. "We'll stay a little longer. Maybe I'll find something else." Toby nodded, trying to be brave. Just then, a group of officers passed through the cargo bay. They barely looked at her, like she was invisible. A few days ago, she would have been the one checking on their wounds, giving them medicine, or helping them breathe after long EVA missions. Now, they didn't even greet her. Mira wasn't angry. She was tired. Later that day, Mira went to the small storage locker where personal items were kept. She still had access to it for 24 more hours. She opened it and took out a photo of her and Dale, Toby's father. In the picture, they were both laughing, their space helmets off, floating outside a training module. "I wonder what you'd say now," she whispered, staring at his smile. Some believed Dale had died during the Titan storm, but there was never proof. No body, no signal, just silence. Mira still wore his badge under her uniform, though now she had no uniform left. She closed the locker, holding the photo tight. Elsewhere on the station, Zane, the new CEO of Unity Corps, stepped out of his sleek private shuttle. He didn't look like a powerful man. No guards, no assistants. Just a simple black jacket, boots, and sharp eyes that noticed everything. The station crew was surprised. CEOs usually stayed on the main planet or in orbiting palaces. They didn't walk into medical stations, especially not the outer ones. Like Station -9. Zane had come for a reason. He had heard too many complaints about this place. Cold leadership, unhappy workers, low morale. He wanted to see it himself. He started his tour quietly, talking to engineers, mechanics, and tech crew. He asked questions, simple ones. "How are you sleeping? Do you feel safe? What do you wish could change here?" Most people didn't know who he was. They answered honestly. Some were scared. Others were honest out of exhaustion. Zane listened carefully. As the sun rose on the station's artificial cycle, Mira and Toby walked toward the hydroponics bay. It was one of the few warm places on the station, and they could sit near the grow lights without being chased away. Inside, plants from Earth grew in long rows. Tomatoes, spinach, mint. Mira sat down and leaned back, letting her eyes close. Toby ran his hand over a leaf. "Mom," he said after a few minutes, "I'm hungry." She reached into her bag and pulled out half a protein bar. "Last one," she said with a smile. "We'll share it." Toby broke it in two and gave her the bigger half. Just then, the door to the hydroponics lab slid open. A tall man stepped inside. He paused, noticing Mira and her son sitting there. Zane didn't say anything right away. He simply watched. Mira saw him and stood quickly. "Sorry, sir. We'll leave. We're not supposed to be here." Zane raised a hand. "It's all right. I'm not security." He walked over and sat across from them. "I'm Zane," he said, extending a hand. "And you are?" "Myra. I used to work here." "As a nurse," she said, shaking his hand. Zane noticed the word used. "What happened?" Mira hesitated, then answered honestly. "I was fired. I brought my son to work. There was no childcare on the station. I tried to keep him safe and hidden. But one night, I got called to help an emergency, and he was discovered. That's all it took." Zane's eyes didn't blink. He listened quietly. "And you?" he asked, turning to Toby. "I just read in the closet," Toby said. "I didn't touch anything." Zane smiled slightly. "Closet, huh? That doesn't sound very comfortable." Myra sighed. "It wasn't ideal. But when a life is on the line, you don't stop to think about comfort." Zane leaned forward. "What if you had the power to change things here? What would you do?" She looked surprised. "I'd make sure people like me don't have to choose between family and duty. That's where mistakes happen, not from tired nurses, but from systems with no heart." Zane nodded. Then he stood. "Thank you for being honest." Before she could ask who he really was, he walked away. That evening, a loud alert rang through the station. "All crew, report to the main chamber. Emergency announcement." Mira looked around. "Strange," she said. They followed the small crowd. Inside the main hall, all workers and officers gathered. At the front, standing under the station's glowing banner, was the same man from HYDROPON. Zane. This time, everyone knew who he was. His name appeared on the screen. Zane Idris, CEO. Unity Core Interstellar. Gasp spread across the room. "I'm here because this station has lost something important," Zane began. "It has lost its balance between policy and humanity." He tapped a small control in his hand. The screen behind him showed a list of outdated policies, some older than Toby. "Today, we begin a full review of all protocols related to family, health, and employee care," Zane said firmly. He paused. "And as for Nurse Mira, she is not fired. She is reinstated immediately." Mira gasped, her eyes wide. "From now on," Zane continued, "no worker should be punished for trying to care for their family. That is not weakness, that is strength." The room erupted into quiet whispers. Some smiled. Others clapped. Toby grinned up at his mom. "Are you a nurse again?" The mood on Orbital Health Station 9 had shifted like the air before a storm. But this time, it was a good kind of change. For years, people on the station had worked in silence, afraid of small mistakes, following old rules like machines. But now someone had spoken for them. Someone powerful. Zane, the new CEO of Unity Core, didn't look like the leaders shown in news broadcasts. He didn't wear a golden badge or speak from a shiny office. He walked through oil-slick floors and crowded halls like a regular worker, and that made everyone curious. Mira, now officially back on the medical team, stood outside the infirmary, adjusting her uniform. It had been freshly given back to her, and it felt strange on her shoulders, like wearing something from a past life. But her hands still remembered how to heal. Inside, the station's chief, Dr. Furin, met her with a simple nod. "Glad to have you back," he said. "It's been quieter without you." Mira smiled. "Don't worry, I'll make some noise soon." She looked at the small med station desk and saw that someone had already placed a chair for Toby in the corner. A few of the younger staff had even left coloring sheets and crayons on it. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than hiding in a closet. Mira touched the corner of her eye and wiped a tear away before anyone could see. Later that day, Zane continued walking across the station with his small tablet. He refused the tour map offered by his assistants. "I want to get lost," he told them. "It helps me see what others miss." So he wandered in the waste recycling unit. He spoke to a woman who repaired filters for 12 hours a day. In the airlock bay, he listened to an old mechanic talk about his brother who got sick from a forgotten oxygen leak. Zane didn't just ask about numbers or equipment. He asked about people, feelings, hopes, fears, and every time the crew stared at him with surprise. "Why do you care?" One engineer finally asked. "Because you keep this place alive," Zane replied. "If you break, the system breaks." Back in the infirmary, Mira treated a bruised miner who had slipped on some coolant. As she cleaned the wound, he said, "Never thought I'd see someone like Zane walk into our mess." Mira nodded. "He's not what I expected." "Me neither," the man replied. "Last CEO only came once. Took some pictures, shook hands, then left in a golden ship." "This one?" "He asked me if I had a safe place to sleep." Mira smiled. "That sounds like him." She turned to check on Toby, who was busy drawing rockets and stars on a sheet of paper. He looked happy and safe. And for Mira, that meant everything. That evening, Zane sent a message to Mira through the station's system. "Mira, meet me at observation deck 3. I'd like to speak with you alone." She felt nervous but curious. She asked a nurse to watch Toby and made her way up. Observation deck 3 was high above the main station, a quiet glass dome filled with stars. The lights were dim, and the view of Jupiter glowed in the distance. Zane was standing there, hands in his pockets, watching the gas giant swirl. "You came," he said as she stepped in. "Of course," she replied. "You asked." "I like people who keep their word," Zane said. There was a long silence. Not uncomfortable, just peaceful. Then he turned to her. "Myra, I didn't just bring you back because you were treated unfairly. I brought you back because I saw something rare." "What did you see?" she asked. "Leadership," he said simply. "You didn't run from responsibility. You made a hard choice to protect your son and do your job at the same time. That's what this company needs, people who care." Mira blinked. "But I'm just a nurse." "No," he said firmly. "You're someone who sees the human side of things when others only see rules." He handed her a tablet. On it was a file labeled, "Project Hearthlight, Internal Review Initiative." "I want you to lead a new program," Zane said. "It will focus on improving life on all Unity Core stations, starting with Station 9, family safety, emergency care, mental health. I need someone who understands what people need, not just what policy says." Mira stared at him. "You want me to lead it?" "Yes, and you won't be alone. I'll assign you a small team. But you'll guide the changes." She looked down at the tablet, then back at him. "I'm not sure I'm ready." "No one ever is," Zane said. "But the best leaders are the ones who never asked for power. They just wanted to do what was right." Mira returned to her quarters, small but warm, now that her access was restored. She placed the tablet on the table and sat beside Toby. He looked up. "You look happy," she smiled. "I think I just got a new job. Are we going to live here forever?" "Maybe not forever," Mira said, "but long enough to make it better." Toby handed her a drawing. It was of a space station with big windows and smiling people. In the corner, he drew her holding a first aid kit. Beside her was a little boy with a big grin at the top. He wrote, "My mom helps everyone." The next day, Mira began her first inspection tour not as a nurse, but as head of human welfare. She didn't wear a badge or carry authority in her voice. She simply walked and listened. She asked workers what they needed. She took notes. She thanked them. Some looked surprised. Others looked hopeful. And slowly, word began to spread, not just on Station 9, but across other Unity Core stations. That change had come, and it had started with a nurse who brought her son to work. The new role was still sinking in. Mira, once just a nurse on Orbital Health Station 9, was now holding the title of head of human welfare. It felt strange to her. She wasn't used to people standing when she entered a room or asking her for approval on things. She was used to holding bandages and calming frightened patients, not reading reports or planning policies, but she didn't run from it. She knew why she had been chosen. Because she cared. Because she understood what people went through every single day. Because she was one of them. Early in the morning, Mira stood at the central command table in her new office. It was smaller than Zane's, but big enough to fit a few chairs, a data screen, and a coffee unit. She wore her medical badge on one shoulder and her new rank patch on the other. Toby sat nearby, building a spaceport model from magnetic tiles. Every now and then, he looked up at her and smiled. He liked seeing his mother in charge. Mira reviewed the list of crew complaints gathered over the last 6 months. Some were about food shortages, some about broken heaters in the sleeping pods. But many were about something else, something deeper. No support for families. No mental health help. No emergency aid for workers with children. One message caught her eye. It was from a technician named Doma, who wrote, "When my partner got sick last year, I had to keep working or risk being sent home. I tried to hide the pain. No one asked. No one cared. I wish we had someone to talk to." Mira read that message twice. She looked at Toby and thought about the night she had to hide him in a closet while she ran to save someone else's life. She had felt the same, alone, scared and unheard. Later that day, Mira met with Zane in the upper lounge, a quiet place with a view of the icy moon outside. "I went through the crew files and messages," she said. "There's a pattern." Zane nodded. "Go on." "People feel unseen," she said. "They don't trust the system. Some follow the rules because they're scared of being punished, not because they believe in the rules." Zane folded his hands. "That's the worst kind of system." She continued, "I don't think it's the workers who are the problem. It's the outdated policies. The rules were written for machines, not for people." Zane's eyes sharpened. "You're right. Most of our protocols were copied from early Earth space programs. They weren't made for deep space living." He tapped his data tablet and pulled up the official policy manual, over 900 pages long. "Take a look at this," he said, sliding it over. Mira opened the file. The text was small and old. Dates from nearly 40 years ago lined the margins. As she scrolled, she saw strange sections like, "No child shall remain on station for more than 4 hours. Emotional rest periods limited to 1 per cycle. Family emergencies must be verified by station command." Mira raised an eyebrow. "No wonder everyone's burned out." Zane nodded. "The truth is, no one's looked at this manual in decades. The company kept adding tech, better ships, faster AI, but never updated how people were treated." He looked at her seriously. "That's your job now." That evening, Mira called her first welfare review meeting. She invited 5 crew members from different jobs: medical, engineering, security, food services, and cleaning staff. They met in a small room, sat on basic chairs, and Mira greeted each of them with a smile. "This is not a top-down meeting," she said. "You're not here to report to me. You're here to teach me." One by one, they spoke. Ravi, the food tech, said, "We get 0 say in meal planning. Sometimes I work 12 hours, and all that's left is cold soup." Minya, a janitor, added, "I twisted my ankle last month. I reported it, but was told I needed to walk it off because we were short-staffed." Ken, the engineer, shared, "My sister died on Earth last cycle. I asked for time off, and the system told me grief wasn't a valid emergency." Mira listened without speaking. She took notes. She nodded. She looked them in the eye. When everyone finished, she stood up. "Thank you," she said. "I promise this is not the last time we meet. and what you shared today will not be forgotten." They left the room, lighter somehow, like someone had finally opened a window in a place that had been sealed too long. A few days later, Mira stood beside Zane in the main station hall. Crew members from all levels had gathered. A new screen lit up behind them, reading, "Announcement, Unit Core Policy Review Phase O&E." Zane spoke first. "We are beginning the biggest change this company has made in 50 years. Not in machines, not in mining, but in how we treat each other." Mira stepped forward. Her voice was calm but clear. "Starting today, we are launching a new initiative, Family First Protocol. This includes emergency childcare zones, access to mental wellness, support, and updated time-off rules for family-related events." She paused. "We're also forming a crew advisory council so workers can help write the policies that affect their lives. No more decisions made without listening." The room filled with quiet murmurs, hopeful ones. One young technician raised her hand and asked, "Is this really going to happen? Or will it get buried like everything else?" Zane answered without hesitation, "It's already happening." That night, Mira walked with Toby through the main corridor. The lights had a new glow. People smiled more. Some stopped her to thank her. Others asked to join the advisory team. Toby tugged her hand. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetie?" "Why do they listen to you now?" She thought for a moment. "Because I told the truth," she said, "and because I didn't stop caring." Toby nodded. "I'm glad you didn't." They walked on mother and son through a station that was finally learning to feel human again. It had been just 2 weeks since the launch of the Family First Protocol, and yet the changes on Orbital Health Station 9 were already being felt in every hallway, every department, and every shift. For the first time in years, people were talking, not just about work, but about their lives, their families, and even their dreams. And for the first time in a long while, someone was listening. Mira sat at her new desk reviewing crew feedback. The once cold and quiet human welfare office now had plants, soft lights, and even a corner for children to rest or play when needed. Toby sat nearby working on a digital learning pad, occasionally glancing over to see what his mother was doing. Mira smiled as she read one of the latest messages from a worker named Hano. "Thank you for making me feel seen. My daughter got sick last week, and this time I didn't have to hide it. I got help. I kept my job. I finally believe this company wants me to stay alive, not just stay useful." She leaned back inside, not in frustration, but in satisfaction. This was why she had accepted the role, not for the title, not for the respect, but for moments like this. At the same time, Zane was meeting with the Unity Core board through HoloLink from the central command room. His face appeared in a glowing screen, calm but firm. Across the virtual table were other leaders, some human, some alien from Earth, Mars, and distant colonies. Their expressions were mixed. Some supported him. Others didn't understand. One older board member, Director Fen, frowned and said, "Zane, your ideas sound emotional. Running a corporation requires order, not heart." Zane looked at him without blinking. "If our people don't feel safe, if they don't feel cared for, they will break. And when they break, our systems break. Emotion is not a weakness, it's the warning light before failure." Another member, a Martian representative, leaned forward. "You're turning our stations into nurseries. That's not how we survive out here." Zane answered with a slow nod. "Actually, it is. Our survival depends on each other. On trust, on human connection. That's what sets us apart." There was silence for a moment. Then the AI secretary said, "Policy review vote. Majority in favor. Protocol update approved." Zane leaned back and smiled. Phase 1 was officially company-wide. Back on Station 9, Mira was leading her first on-site inspection with a team from the Welfare Committee. She had invited 5 workers from different departments to walk with her real voices. Real stories. First, they visited the old storage room that had once been a secret hiding place for Toby. Mira paused at the door, placing her hand gently on it. "This," she said to the group, "is where everything started." The room was quiet. Then she continued, "This is why we're building a new child emergency support bay near the med unit. No more hiding. No more fear." The group nodded, some even clapping softly. They moved on to the engineering wing, where Myra spoke with Ken, the head mechanic. "How are things going since the new changes?" she asked. Ken wiped oil from his hands. "Honestly, better. My team's working the same hours, but now we're not afraid to speak up when someone's struggling. And we're not punished for it. That alone makes a big difference." Mira made notes. "Anything still missing?" He nodded. "Yeah, we need a place for workers to rest mentally, not just physically. A quiet zone, meditation space. Whatever you want to call it." Myra smiled. "That's a good idea. I'll write a proposal." That evening, the welfare team met in the open lounge area for food and conversation. It was not a formal meeting, just a meal between people who cared. Space was brighter now, filled with laughter and music from different parts of Earth. People brought dishes from their cultures, and the smell of real spices drifted in the air. Mira sat with Menya, the janitor who once worked without recognition. "Feels different now, doesn't it?" Menya asked. "Yes," Mira replied. "It feels alive." "Feels like home," Menya said softly. Mira looked around. Children ran through the hallway, workers smiled, and no one seemed afraid. But not everyone was happy about the changes. In a quiet section of the admin wing, Raul, the former station manager who had fired Mira, watched from a distance. He had been suspended by Zane, but not removed completely. He sat at a desk, staring at the screen showing new policies and crew activity. "She broke the system," he muttered. "No," said a voice behind him. Zane stepped into the room. "She fixed it." Raul stood up. "You're weakening the station. These people don't need hugs. They need rules." Zane walked up to him, calm as always. "You had years to lead. You had the chance to listen. You chose silence. Now it's time for someone else to lead, with heart and vision." Raul's voice dropped. "She's just a nurse." Zane looked him straight in the eye. "She was a nurse. Now she's the reason this station will survive the next century." Later that night, Mira sat beside Toby on their small bunk. He had fallen asleep with a storybook in his hands. She kissed his forehead, then opened her datapad to review tomorrow's plans. But instead, she opened a personal file, an old recording Dale had sent her long ago. His voice came through, soft and smiling. "If anything ever happens to me, take care of Toby, but also take care of yourself. You're the strongest person. I know, and people need to see that." Mira closed the recording and smiled. "They're starting to see it," she whispered. Change had begun. Real change. Not in machines. Not in weapons. Not in systems. But in people. And it started with a woman. A nurse. A mother. Across the stars, word about Orbital Health Station 9 was spreading faster than expected. Other Unity Core stations, some orbiting moons, others on deep space mining routes, started receiving internal messages. At first, they were confused. Emergency. Childcare zones? Mental restrooms? Open door policy with welfare heads? These ideas sounded soft, strange, unnecessary. At least, that's what many of the station leaders thought. But the workers? They were curious. They started asking questions. And slowly, they began to hope. On Station 9, Mira walked through the newly built Compassion Room, a quiet place with soft lighting, music from Earth, and comfortable seats. Workers came here when they needed a break, not from tasks, but from the weight they carried inside. On the wall was a plaque with her quote engraved on it. "A strong station begins with strong hearts. Rest is not weakness. Care is not failure." She didn't ask them to put that there. Someone had done it as a thank you. Mira had never seen herself as a leader, but now everyone else did. One day, a message arrived from Station 14, located near the asteroid belt. The station's manager, a woman named Riva, asked to visit Station 9. "I want to see what you've built." Her message read. Mira met her at the docking bay. Riva stepped out stern, dressed in formal black, and clearly skeptical. "I've heard rumors," Riva said. "Your changes are unusual." Mira smiled. "That's one way to describe them." As they walked the station together, Riva asked hard questions. "Don't your people get lazy with all this care?" Mira calmly replied, "No, they work harder because they know someone has their back. Isn't this expensive?" "It's more expensive to replace broken people," Mira said. "Fixing a machine is easy. Fixing a human soul takes time." Riva didn't say much after that. But when she left, she sent another message, requesting copy of Family First Protocol. Preparing to implement Phase 1. Another station had changed. Meanwhile, the company board back on Earth began receiving reports, strange ones. Productivity was rising on Station -9. Accidents were going down. More workers were choosing to stay rather than rotate out. It confused them. How could a station that gave people more time off, more care, and more freedom be performing better? Zane responded to them with a single statement: "Humanity leads when it is treated like humanity." Soon, alien observers from partner species began visiting Station 9. Some of them didn't understand human emotions. Others studied humans like curious scientists. One alien delegate from the Tivan Alliance asked Mira directly, "Why do you invest resources into emotional management? Isn't logic enough?" Mira answered, "Because a machine can follow logic. But humans feel fear, sadness, joy, and love. If we ignore that part, we lose what makes us human." The Tivan wrote this down carefully. Later, they added human emotional design to their training programs for working with Terran crews. Back in the station's community lounge, Toby sat with a group of children. Thanks to the new rules, workers with kids could now rotate childcare duties and take short breaks without fear of punishment. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. One of the other children asked Toby, "Why do we have all these fun things now?" Toby smiled and pointed at his mom, who was nearby speaking with a nurse. "Because of her," he said proudly. Another child asked, "Who is she?" Toby thought for a moment. Then he said, "She's the reason we don't have to hide anymore." One evening, the station held a celebration. Nothing too grand, just lights, shared food, and music. It marked the end of Phase 2 of the Family First Protocol. Mira was asked to speak. She stood on a small stage. Workers, children, and even visitors filled the room. She looked out at them and said, "When I was fired for bringing my son to work, I thought I had failed. But now I see it was the moment everything began to change. Not just for me, but for all of us. We realized we don't have to choose between being professionals and being people. We can be both." She paused, looking at Toby in the front row. "This station was built with metal and machines. But now it stands strong because of compassion. You all made that possible. And I'm proud of what we've become together." The room erupted in applause. Later that night, Zane and Mira stood on the observation deck, watching the stars. "You've done well," Zane said quietly. "I didn't do it alone," Mira replied. "No leader ever does," he said with a smile. She looked at him. "Why did you pick me? Back then when I had nothing." Zane shrugged. "Because you still chose to care when no one else did. That's rare, and rare things are valuable." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mira asked, "What happens next?" Zane looked out into the stars. "We expand. We bring this model to more stations, more ships, more outposts. People need it, even if they don't know it yet." By the end of that cycle, Station 9 had become the central model for all Unity Corps operations. They called it the human first blueprint. Other companies started noticing too. Soon, the galaxy began to see humans not just as survivors, not just as builders or warriors, but as something even more powerful. Species across space began to ask, what makes humans so strong? And the answer came from a single story: a mother, a nurse, a leader who refused to leave her child behind. The soft hum of Orbital Health Station 9 was no longer a sound of silence or fear. It was alive with quiet energy, a steady rhythm of hope and life. Mira stood by the main window, holding Toby's hand. Together, they looked out at the glowing blue planet below and the stars beyond. Her journey had been hard. She had lost her job. She had faced judgment. But she had never lost her heart. And now, she was part of something bigger. The human first blueprint had become the new standard across Unity Core stations. Policies once written without people in mind were rewritten with care and respect. Children no longer hid in closets. They played in safe spaces. Workers no longer feared punishment for needing help. They received it. Mira walked through the busy medical bay. Nurses and doctors worked with renewed energy. Patients smiled with more ease. And Toby was no longer just her son. He was a symbol of change. One afternoon, a group of visitors arrived. Leaders from other companies, diplomats from distant planets, and reporters from Earth's largest news networks. They wanted to see the station that had changed everything. Myra was invited to speak. Standing before the crowd, she told her story, the story of a struggling nurse who brought her son to work, was fired, but never gave up. She said, "I wasn't the best nurse. I was just a mother trying to survive. But when we listen to each other, when we build systems with heart, we become stronger than any machine." The crowd listened, moved by her words. A reporter asked, "What advice would you give to other companies?" Mira smiled softly. "Treat people like people, because that's what they are." Meanwhile, Zane, the CEO who had believed in her, stood in his office. Watching the news, he smiled. His faith in one nurse had sparked a revolution, but he knew this was only the beginning. Back on the station, Mira and Toby spent time in the compassion room, where workers came for rest and support. Toby played with other children, laughing freely. Mira watched, feeling grateful. Her heart was full. That night, Mira received a message from Doma, the technician who had once hidden his pain. "Because of you, I took time to heal. I'm stronger now." "Thank you," she replied simply. "Keep going. We're all in this together." Outside the station, a small fleet of ships prepared for launch, bearing the human first blueprint to new frontiers. The galaxy was changing because one woman had dared to care, because one CEO had dared to listen, because humanity, in its simplest form, was strongest when it cared for its own. As Mira tucked Toby into bed that night, he whispered, "Mom, do you think we can change the whole galaxy?" She kissed his forehead and said, "One step at a time, Toby, one step at a time." And with that hope, the stars seemed a little brighter.